Welcome everyone to today's session, Preparing New Zealand Fleets for the Next Era of Cost Control and Compliance. This is going to be a fireside chat format, so we're going to move through our 6 topics with our speakers, and I will be guiding the conversation alongside. We have a really fantastic panel joining me today. We have Andy Patrick, the CEO of Argus Tracking, Dan Marson, the head of sales, Pete McDonald, that's Argus's director of product. And from our side, from Teltonika APAC, we have Joscha Rund, he's our head of sales, and Kes Grassley is our CEO. And lastly, my name's Letitia Gosman. I'm the regional manager here at Teltonika IoT Group, and I will be moderating the conversation today. Please, as we head through our topics, feel free to post any questions that pop up in the Q&A. We'll have some time at the end to live address your questions. Let's get into it. So there's really 3 things that are hitting New Zealand fleets at the same time right now. We have a live fuel crisis, we have a regulatory deadline that's fast approaching, and we have a structural gap in how most fleets are using data. Any one of these really would have been enough to warrant this conversation, but all 3 of them are arriving together, and that's why we're here together to talk about that today. Let's start the conversation with where fleets are quietly losing money today. Kes, can you maybe open with a real example, a fleet that you've seen recently where the numbers were genuinely shocking once the data came in?
Yeah, hello everyone. Happy to be here and happy to see everyone here. Yeah, indeed, fuel crisis has affected every livelihood and every fleet. Whether you are a mover with 10 trucks or a large fleet operator, you're definitely feeling the hit on the fuel invoice, and that in some weeks, in some months, has gone up by 50%, right? Or even more. There were days where fuel was even 50% more expensive. So that's obviously an obvious leak of money and leak of your profits. However, there's also maintenance that's also contributing to that. So right now, it's very important than ever before to look after, how long your vehicles are idling, because that's an opportunity for you to save some fuel there. And you need actionable insights to be able to see which driver is jumping out of the medium, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely a common trend that we've seen where some of the fleets that we've been working with, it's a common story for them to be spending an extra 50% on fuel, which is...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's going to hit people hard. Joscha, from your perspective, what are the main cost strains that you see across the board when fleets are first getting that visibility?
Thanks, Letitia. Fuel consumption is one of the biggest costs on the forefront of everyone's minds at the moment, and there's several contributing factors to that. As Kes has mentioned, idle times can contribute up to 60% of fuel wastage across a fleet. When you extrapolate that out across an entire year, that can be several $100,000 in money left on the table when small changes to drivers' behavior, or even using the hardware in a way that you have an idle cutoff of the engine, you can bring those costs down without having to do too much else. Other impacts on the consumption of fuel also include driver performance and behavior. So speeding, harsh acceleration, and just adverse driving behaviors have a massive impact on not just the longevity and the health of the vehicle, but also how much fuel is being consumed. When you're given, data, you can use that in a proactive way to really have some informed decision-making processes in place, being able to set a baseline and then being able to make small changes to see how that impacts your driver scoring is really important to bring those costs back down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that point that you made, that it can become hundreds of thousands of dollars across many fleets. this is kind of an illustration of what you were saying, what it looks like in the data in real time. So your idle time, your unsafe events before implementing telematics versus after. Andy, what do fleet managers, do fleet managers in New Zealand even know where the money is going, first of all? And what do they find when they actually see it?
Yeah, well, thanks, Lisa. Great question. Yeah, great to be here, and good to see everyone on the webinar today. Yeah, look, I think most Kiwi fleet managers, they can tell you what they spend on fuel, they can tell you what they spend on servicing or tyres, etc., but not necessarily why those costs are happening and where that leakage might be, or even which vehicles and drivers are maybe driving the problem, pun intended. So, as Kez and Yosha have mentioned, fuel spend creeping up, month on month, don't necessarily know if that's outside of the Donald Trump influence or what it is. Idling is another one, obviously. Inefficient routes. Other things too, like underutilised vehicles. They're still owned, they're still leased, serviced, insured. So when you start getting into the telematics journey, you start to pick up some things like that. Maintenance becoming reactive, also being reactive instead of being preventative, and things like fuel card misuse and no single source of truth are a couple of other key things which we help to highlight. I think, basically there's a lot of hidden waste that's kind of baked into the business. Another one is compliance, right? Kiwi fleets, we've got RUCs, WAFs, COFs, driver hours, health and safety, all those sorts of things, used to be in spreadsheets, etc., creating admin burdens and risk exposure, etc. Again, and another thing that people notice when starting in with telematics, and in its rawest form, losses occur through theft. We've got examples where we had a customer who had a driver filling up boats on the weekend. The owner eventually worked out he'd probably been doing it for several years. That's probably a couple of $1,000 disappeared. Another one had a worker going down to the golf course every week, which equates to, if you take it across a year, about 25 days of lost productivity. So what it starts bringing you into visibility of is not just the tracking vehicle itself, but which is kind of entry level or table stakes, if you like. The smarter operator is actually looking at how it impacts the wider business and using that data to manage business performance. So questions start to become, which vehicles are costing us the most per K or underutilised? What drivers are contributing unnecessarily to that? Where we're losing productive hours, etc. Where can we automate? So your telematics sort of becomes a lot more valuable once you establish the location tracking and the driver safety, but then moving into the operational visibility and decision making. Lots are missing that at the moment, but where many companies in New Zealand are progressing further down that journey now.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really shocking about the theft, but I imagine in a fleet that is a real risk that could happen. I mean, you have all sorts of people employed in your business, but aside from the theft, even just wastage. So I think a common figure is 10 to 25% of wastage happening in a fleet. In New Zealand, 50 vehicle fleet wasting that amount of fuel at today's prices would be easily $150,000 to $200,000 a year.
And I guess very important thing to add that by installing telematics, you can reduce by default by 10% just because the device is there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've heard what the cost is of not having data. The next pressing question is, why don't more fleets have it? This graph shows what the telematics penetration is globally, broken up by important regions. So New Zealand is sitting alongside Europe at around 27%. That is a trick figure though, because Europe's fleet is over 68 million, whereas New Zealand's fleet is under 1 million. Kes, from your experience, are those two numbers telling very different stories? Can you explain what's actually different about European fleets using telematics versus what we see in New Zealand and Australia?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that on the surface, it's very misleading, this slide, because as you just mentioned, the trackable commercial fleets size are way different, Europe versus New Zealand and Australia combined even. So where I come from, Europe, Lithuania, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we had majority of the government bodies already equipped with telematic devices, right? And likes of Argus in our part of the world were already competing to take over that government body from one to another, so they can add value with additional features like route optimization, maintenance schedules, etc., right? Whereas here in New Zealand, Australia including, we are still, noticing and participating in tenders where government bodies never had a telematics solution ever before. And we're talking not only about, small fleets up to like 50 vehicles, we're talking about fleets over 1,000 vehicles and vehicles that go to rural, regional locations, unsupervised, no visibility. So God forbid something happens to the vehicle, or even worse, to the driver. No one knows where he is, and especially if it's a out of reception area, who's going to and where to go and give that help. So a good example, New South Wales National Parks. That's an example I'm talking about, but there's plenty more. I'm sure guys at Argus meet and talk with these kind of people nearly every week.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to bring up. So 10 years ago, you were working in Europe, and it was very common that almost every major fleet and government body had not just telematics, but fairly sophisticated telematics, right? Rolled out across their fleets. Whereas the picture that we see here locally is that it's very common to come across even a government fleet that has nothing in place whatsoever and has never had anything in place whatsoever. And I guess that opens up to a wider sort of behavioral thing that we see. We can see here on the graph why we use this, even though the 27% makes New Zealand and Europe look neck and neck when they aren't, is we see the United States at 92% adoption. And how they got there was through mandate, right? They had to. There was just no way around it. For certain parts of the European fleet, the main sort of driving parts of the European fleet that are heavily tracked and tracked with advanced tracking, they need to through regulation. The EU requires them to do that. This could be through the tachograph rules, the CO targets, fleet safety directives, and these sorts of things. So now in New Zealand, we're kind of experiencing both of those things happening at the same time. There's a market level requirement, but there's also a regulatory requirement that's just around the corner, and it's really going to push New Zealand into that digitization that we're going to see in the next era. Now the part that we all hate, but we need to address, the elephant in the room. So this is the fuel prices that we're dealing with right now. And this is not a forecast. This is actually what we're living through and experiencing at the moment. Dan, when you're talking to fleet managers every day since this happened, has the nature of those conversations changed at all? What are they asking for now that they weren't 6 months ago?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Letitia. Great to be here and great to see everyone here as well. In a nutshell, yeah, the conversation has changed. We've noticed a shift. The big change is, of course, the fuel usage, and I guess by extension, the overall fleet usage and efficiency. It's gone from being something that was perhaps 6 months ago sat firmly in the lap of the fleet manager. It was in their domain. Versus now it's really been brought up to that board level, because that cost, as you can see on the graph there, it's gone up to the point where you can't really ignore it anymore. So I guess there's 2 points of view. For fleets without any telematics in place, the conversation is just about getting that visibility. They feel like they know they need to do something, but they don't really know what to do. They don't know what the right move is because they don't have the data to make that informed decision. So they're asking not just where the vehicles are, of course, but how are they being used, and are they wasting fuel, wasting time and distance? How can they fix those problems, and what should they fix first? And again, they don't really know how to tackle those, or even how to prioritize the order of which ones to tackle first. And then for the fleets that have telematics already embedded in their vehicles, which the majority of the people here today, I imagine, the conversation's a bit further along. It's a bit more mature. Perhaps they're not so much asking for the data, they already have that. But as Kez mentioned earlier, they're asking for the actionable insights. They want to know what they can do with the data that they have in order to make a difference. They might not really care, honestly, if they've got a dashboard for the sake of having a dashboard, or just another report which is, adding to the suite of reports they already have. They actually more want to lean on their telematics provider to help them actually understand which levers they can pull that might make a material difference. So I guess in a nutshell, regardless of which bucket you fall into, everyone's kind of wanting to move from the place where we know there's a problem towards we know exactly what to focus on and actually what action we need to take to solve the problem. Adding on to that as well, I think the other part of the conversation which we're having more of now is the integration part. Telematics data is great in itself, but it becomes much more powerful when you can integrate it with other providers or other services. So a good example, fuel card providers. If the telematics provider can integrate with that, it's really good. You can connect your fuel spend with what you're seeing with your vehicle usage and that driver behavior that Yosha mentioned before. And you can kind of connect those dots. And again, for a lot of fleets, that's kind of moving away from just being a nice to have to really a necessity. They want to be able to connect those dots and see what to do.
They need to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, this current fuel crisis has highlighted the importance of being proactive, I think. If you've not got something in place, have the visibility, and if you do, lean on it and use it, not just to the best of your ability, but lean on your telematics provider to help get that info as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic advice as well. Not forgetting to who you're working with and using them as a tool to help you through. What does that mean for a fleet that doesn't have any visibility over their fuel spend? So we looked at the numbers of how much of our fleet is not tracked at all. Maybe Yosha, you want to give some perspective on this. What is that going to mean for a fleet that just has no tracking whatsoever? They are out there.
I think in the current climate, it's definitely a difference between turning a profit for the year and making a loss, especially currently with the fuel price. I think this is driving a lot of individuals who've never utilized telematics as a solution, pushing them to onboard it, and just addressing the fuel wastage is only the first step. This is a big push to understand how to utilize the data and the insights that you get from the telematics solutions, and that's going to flow on to so many other areas in the future as well, including, and I think we'll be covering that in a little bit, the eRUC and even insurance, being able to bring down your premiums and have a true real-time risk profile of individual drivers, individual fleets, and see how that stacks up and compares to other similar businesses, similar individuals. So I think this is just the first step, really.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful point. With the current prices that we're dealing with, it could very well for many people be the difference of making a profit and not. So you gave a nice segue. eRUC, this is one of the biggest regulatory changes compounding at the moment. Let's go into it a little bit. This is more or less a timeline of where we are. So half the heavy vehicle fleet is already on eRUC. Legislation passing this year, 2027, is when the system is going to open commercially. Pete, for those fleets in New Zealand that are still on paper eRUC today, what's the single biggest risk of not starting this conversation right now?
Thanks, Letitia. Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's a lot of changes going on in this space right now, and fleets really need to acknowledge that those changes are material. Traditionally, road user charges have only really been relevant for diesel fleets, more recently EVs and PHEVs, but yeah, there will be a lot of people still completely unfamiliar with, what are RUCs and how do they work. the first major change that operators need to be aware of is that we're moving towards implementing RUCs across all vehicle types, including light petrol vehicle fleets. On top of that, Waka Kotahi and ZTA are incentivizing New Zealand to digitize this traditionally paper-based system, which, while it presents fleets with opportunity for efficiency improvements, it also presents challenges and risks if not approached in the right way. I think that's really the core of where I'm going with this, is that the biggest risk is not approaching it in the right way. And it begs a question that fleet operators should be asking themselves: how should we approach this? And I think the way I've framed this topic is really that it's not just about replacing a paper label with a digital one. Fundamentally, it changes RUC management from an admin function into a data workflow. The teams, systems, workflows which drive the processes are going to have to evolve with that change too. So on the fleet level, that means the quality of your vehicle data, your hardware choices, reporting, billing processes, and even exception handling are all starting to matter more. And care really must be taken to balance moving quickly to prepare for the change and ensuring the right solutions are put in place from the start. There's a massive risk here, I think, in compressing a business change into a compliance deadline. You leave that deadline until the last minute and it's really close, you risk making rush decisions, potentially choosing technology that solves maybe the immediate compliance requirement, but doesn't actually support the next few years of fleet operations. Finding the minimum viable solution that won't scale with your operations. A great example here is heavy fleets, where very specific hardware requirements for approved distance recorders will be mandated on a legal level for this kind of solution. So in starting here, I think that the smart move is to start by assessing your readiness. What's your vehicle mix, current devices, hardware, data quality, reporting needs and workflows, and where all of those processes are hiding.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on it, that's what's actually changing. So the paper licenses going to digital records, you have flexible billing, and ZTA stepping back, opening up the market. And you touched on that as well. There's a lot of what fleets need for eRUC that overlaps into what they already are going to want for operational visibility. So I think the key takeaway of what you said there was, you really need to be conscious of not just what do I need for eRUC, but what is my business going to need for the next 5 to 10 years. Cass, you've seen this pattern sort of all across Europe with changes. I mean, New Zealand's facing the eRUC change now, but at Teltonika, we've been through this with many different countries in different forms, where they've digitized licenses, they've digitized their tolling, they've digitized how they charge users for roads. What have you?
So one of the most recent examples would be Poland, right? So Poland is a powerhouse in Europe, really, and 7 times bigger than New Zealand. And government mandated the commercial fleets to pay for the roads, right? And I'm not aware what sort of technology or solution they had previously, but what Teltonika helped to achieve for many fleets is that all those road user charges were implemented via telematics device, right? So that just shows the scale and capability of our hardware that is, not only serving you when you have the immediate need to fix the problem of fuel leakages, of just overall profitability leakages, but also future-proofs you for solutions like eRUC. So
yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, when I went to New Zealand, just to I'm not to sidetrack, but I was surprised. I was not even aware that in New Zealand you have to have this little paper sheet tagged with how many kilometers you can do, and this has to be slid on the window. So that was a big discovery for me, but also surprising that in this day and age we're still relying on a piece of paper.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an important transition that we saw all across Europe, as we've seen. On the pollen point, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's definitely a big thing that we've picked up in the last year or so, Kees, with the paper eRUC license. So again, we've got a solution to solve that digitally. So we are working through that and rolling that out across a lot of fleets. But I think really the underlying approach that's coming and that people need to get their heads around is that pretty much everything is going to become user pays. We will pay as consumers and we will pay as commercial fleets for the kilometres that we drive on the roads. So it will be much more based around those sorts of things, as opposed to a generic vehicle registration fee, which helps offset road tolls and road usage and those elements, to just becoming almost purely user pays. I mean, it's going to take time for sure, but the more that you're thinking along those lines now and working out how you can actually optimize every little thing that you do today will definitely help in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. That's actually a fantastic point. And it kind of speaks to something broader. So whenever we've seen at Teltonika, because we're global, we've seen many countries moving to various different systems, all different, manner of charging roads, or any major technology shift that was mandated by governing bodies. We've all kind of seen the same sort of thing. People just address what they need to do immediately, and they usually tend to leave it a little bit too late as well, where they'll know it's coming, but they'll kind of start acting 3 to 4 months out. And what that does is it leaves them open to kind of bottlenecking, where either they're going to deal with potentially having vehicles off the road if they haven't transitioned in time, or dealing with fines, which is something that I was going to add on to what Kes said. In Poland, when we were doing this major project for the commercial tolling, some fleets did just find out that which vehicles they had to upgrade by being fined. And that's quite devastating for a fleet provider to deal with. So I guess the key point is that absolutely think about what your business is going to need, not just for this, but into the future, because it's the same hardware and it's the same technology, really. And to work with a provider that's going to know your business and flag this for you well in advance. Now that's a great segue. You know why? Let's talk about what we actually do with the data once we have it. How are leading fleets using operational data to reduce their inefficiencies? This chart shows the improvement ranges across fuel, safety, maintenance, and emissions. Pete, route optimization and green driving compound each other. Can you explain what that looks like in practice for New Zealand fleets and what kind of improvements they can realistically expect?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, looking at the big picture and the ways that fleets are using data, that they're not just focusing on collecting more data. They're identifying what are the highest value signals in their fleet and turning them into actions to make better operating decisions. There's a little bit of a trap which we can fall into sometimes, right? We're thinking more data automatically means better operations. And that's just not the case. Better operations comes from the right data surfaced at the right time with a clear action attached. Raw data tells you what happened. Contextualized data helps you understand why it matters and what to do next. And when this is achieved, the outcomes, they multiply. So, route optimization, safe driving, green driving, efficient driving, they all compound. A driver following optimized routes and driving smoothly can achieve 30 to 40% improvement in fuel consumption versus their baseline. These aren't separate initiatives. They really multiply each other.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an important point as well. So that coaching and the reduction of unsafe events can massively improve the bottom line for a fleet operationally. Andy, if we look at the crash reduction number, 20 to 35%, that's not really just a safety conversation, is it? How do we have this conversation with the finance department? You're muted.
Right. Sorry, there we go. Yeah, it is one of the things that probably most surprises me about fleets in New Zealand, that correlation between reducing vehicle incidents, crashes, around that 30% when you take on a telematics system and you monitor your drivers and they know that that's happening. You're reducing that, and therefore there's a clear conversation to have with the insurance companies, right? You can reduce your premiums because you know and you can show that you've reduced the risk to the insurer. So a great example we had was a customer with a fairly substantial fleet. They saw a 50% reduction in speeding fines after about 3 months after installing Argus. Went from basically one a week down to a couple a month. That alone is a clear indication of risk reduction. So, for fleet managers, it might start with that safety conversation and around the driver and better behaviour, but you can easily turn that into a financial conversation. And I guess the ultimate result is, as a fleet manager, as a fleet leader, you win, your drivers certainly win because they're safer, and ultimately the company wins. So again, it's moving the conversation from that immediate data point to actually what's the wider implication here, what's the bigger business discussion that I can have and be involved in to show how what we're doing here in the fleet is actually mattering and helping the business in the long term.
Yeah, that's incredible, that massive reduction in incidences. Pete, maybe you can talk to this. I know you know a little bit about this. Andy had started to touch on it. So there's passive gains, aren't there, when you're implementing these sorts of system? Can you speak to what happens to driver behavior just from the business being aware of what it is that they're doing? This is, before any coaching systems even start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, from a psychological standpoint, just drivers' awareness that these types of initiatives are being implemented, there's visibility on the way that they're behaving in a vehicle. It adds accountability to their behavior across the board. And what it means is that you end up getting a bunch of passive gains. Drivers measurably change behavior simply by knowing they're tracked, before any formal coaching begins. And that turns around into reduced fuel burn, fleet costs drop, driver safety improves. All of this doesn't cost any extra time or any extra resources from any standpoint. It really just feeds back into the culture of safe driving as well, which really needs to be fostered within the company culture level.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
I can add something here as well. It's not just the business that ultimately benefits from the improved efficiency and safety of their fleet. We've seen several fleet operators that we work with offer bonuses on a monthly basis for the top ranked drivers for that month. If they're saving an additional 10 to 20% on their operation costs just because a driver has really taken the time to try and be better on the road, they can then offer bonuses and everyone wins, and it also improves the retention of their drivers, their best drivers, and those drivers feel valued at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's add on the topic. Sorry, Peter. And I guess it's a bit too early to talk about this, but it's already happening in Europe, in UK, in Italy, and other Western European countries, right? Insurance telematics. So imagine your fleet is equipped with GPS tracking, right? So you're already aggregating all those points of data that later on can be translated into a visual deck for the insurance, not only to reduce your premiums, but essentially to reduce your premiums, right? Because just by having a GPS tracker, yes, you can put a statement forward, but Yosha, you were sharing an example early on, about the your fleet might be not collecting any fining tickets, right? Just because they are lucky, but the drivers might be doing a terrible job at that they're driving, right? Well, the other company is doing a great job, but just we're not lucky at sometimes. So insurances will move to that space where they're going to evaluate how your fleet is looking against the even national level, and based on that, reduce your premiums. But that's only possible when telematics is in your vehicles.
Yeah, that's a really fantastic angle to bring up. I mean, it's not as poignant in Australia and New Zealand as we, having experience in other markets, would have hoped that it would be. But it just speaks to that wider point, how important it is when you're thinking about your technology stack, what might change in the market, and am I prepared? Because yes, if you're running a fleet business, starting to monitor driver behavior is going to change it immediately. Then you start rewarding good behavior, and then you can start identifying sore points and start coaching that behavior. But that also works in the wider public, and it also works regardless of who's driving what. So I think we saw in the UK when they implemented insurance telematics as a system for young drivers as a way to keep them safe on the road. In the first year, they saw a 30% reduction in injury-causing incidents for people under the age of 25. And if you, I don't know if anybody here has kids in the audience, if you think about what that would mean for your children, it's just really incredible in terms of a safety point, and also what it means for reducing incidents on the road. You're not just relying on infrastructure and on the government mandates, but you're creating a safer environment for everybody to drive. You're reducing the emissions from your vehicles. You're optimizing your vehicle use. You're reducing your costs, operating costs, insurance costs, any costs that you can point to, you're reducing that. And it's all the same system, and it's all working to feed into your business in the same way. So that's a really good little segue. Pete, did you still have something to add before we move on?
Yeah, I think actually just in a really synergistic point there, it's really demonstrating clearly that it's becoming less of an operational needs kind of decision and more of a strategic business decision. As who are companies selecting as their partners to work in these kinds of spaces, because it's not happening in silos anymore. We've got telematics feeds working with insurance companies and the whole ecosystem working together. So it's starting to become more and more important. And there's kind of other ROI arguments which can be taken into account as well. So one of the most underused ones, in my opinion, is actually fleet right sizing. When fleet utilization data is contextualized and turned into action, it can be turned into actions which result in reducing the number of vehicles an organization actually needs to achieve the exact same outcome. And I mean, we've worked with quite a few clients, with this on, some smaller projects and some really quite colossal projects. And one in particular with one of our key clients, Kainga Order, who I think a couple might be in the audience today. We worked, massive project. We worked with them and another partner to analyze a huge amount of data, covering real driving patterns across EVs, ICE vehicles, and essentially we created the foundation to rationalize and optimize the fleet from a size of 900 plus vehicles down to many hundreds below. And today the same business outcomes are being achieved, but the number of the amount of resources going in to achieve those has dropped just purely due to the right actions being taken from the right data.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. You touched on it a little bit there, but I mean, from a hardware and a software provider point of view, it's not really in our best interest to reduce vehicle size. But if that's going to be the best operational outcome for your partner, we're all in on that, because at the end of the day, it's about creating value for our customers.
Yeah, just to touch on that as well, if I can, from I suppose the sales and a customer who's been with us for a shorter amount of time, there's sometimes some skepticism when that comes up in conversation, right? Because they're well aware that how we make money is more connections. And so when this conversation pops up, the reason we signed up to you guys is actually to reduce fleet size. Is that not a bit of a conflict? Actually, no. It boils down to our core vision as a company. I mean, the reason we do what we do, the reason we exist, is to create intelligence to elevate people, performance, and planet. And that planet piece is really key there when it comes to number of vehicles on the road, as we all know. So yeah, it does boil down to, as you guys are saying, if we can help a fleet downsize, although that does mean they pay us less, we see that as a big win, because we're still helping them achieve their goals, and we're helping move ourselves towards our ultimate vision as well.
That's
Fantastic.
a really, really good point there, Dan. And just kind of like off the back of that and adding a little bit more context, I see Nick has helped to provide actually some more specific information about the change we worked with Kāinga Order on. And so, the fleet was previously at 987 vehicles. And thanks, Nick, by the way, for providing that context. That's super helpful. We've got it down to 419 now. So you can see that's like less than half the size of the fleet. The same business outcomes are being achieved, but the cost driving improvements that we've made here are just phenomenal. And the team over at Kāinga Order have done an excellent job in executing that project as well.
Yeah, excellent. Congratulations on that. Just conscious of time, I want to move on to the next point. So there is a data to action gap in the market. We know it, we feel it, we see it. Conveniently, a week ago, there was a study published by Escalent Fleet Advisory Hub. They actually did a global study, and they found that 55% of fleet operators answered that their telematics systems had not met their expectations. And 45% strongly agreed, only 45% strongly agreed that their solution met their needs. Andy, does that match what you're seeing in New Zealand? Why do you feel that gap might exist?
Yeah, absolutely. It reflects conversations that we're having, in New Zealand. I think we've kind of covered it, but I mean, well, the real question is not about actually having data now. Most have it. It's about having the right data in the right format at the right time. So I think the key things it pulls out there is not enough integration between systems. Does the telematics or GPS system interact with workflow or workflow systems or HR systems within businesses? Also, there's often not enough internal resource to analyze data. Often we see large fleets in the hundreds being run by one person or two people. A lot of work, and then the other things we've sort of touched on is that applying the insights to the operations. So yeah, it's in dashboards, but it's not really driving operational decisions. So I think it's like it's happened in construction. Over the years, software was built like a construction site. You have a single tool for a single job. You use a hammer for a nail and you use a drill for a screw, and you don't mix the two. And that's how software's been traditionally. So here at Argus, we're definitely moving more towards the integration and the ecosystem conversation. We already integrate with a whole bunch of different fuel card providers and things like that. So it is about pulling that data together, but then joining disparate sections or disparate data sets and making useful decisions. I think that 55% at the top there, they say that globally, telematics hasn't met their expectations, and my take on it is that's wise, because the telematics been isolated within the system. So we want to be in the 45% that our customers feel like they're getting real value out of it. And again, it's around that partnership and execution. So it's partnership with other suppliers and other software vendors, but also with our customers. It's why we developed the firm framework, which some of you would have seen on our blog and other publicity. You've got it there. Yeah, it sort of shows, when people first think about telematics, it is thinking about theft. Where's my vehicle? What's going on? And then you start to progress through those dimensions. We've got to 9D. I'm sure we'll be able to add some more in the future, but you start asking deeper questions around operational efficiency and around driver compliance and things like that. So, again, that's how we're operating, alongside people like yourself at Teltonika, Letitia, it's a tracking platform, it's a GPS device, but actually what business outcomes are we trying to improve, and how do we help each of our customers achieve those?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. So I when I first saw this, I thought it was really fantastic and interesting, because overarching, we're talking about what's happening in the market. We're talking about the pressures that fleet providers are facing every day. And we're saying, look, you need to implement these systems that are going to improve your visibility, but also you need to roll that out into your business and make sure that it's working to translate that into actionable insights. And then down to the optimization. But I think what isn't spoken about enough is there is no one size fits all. We have the market pressures, we have the individual business and the variables that exist within those. And I think it's really powerful that you guys have taken that step. And I think it's an important thing to start expecting telematics providers to be on board with, is we're not here to sell you a service. We're here to actually be your partner. We're here as your fleet partner to work with you, to get to understand what your company is struggling with. We know what the market is requiring of you, and we're going to help you to get there in a way that fits with your business and where you're at. And I think that that's a really, really fantastic ethos to have. It does also echo our way of operating, right down from designing the device to deploying them as well, that we think about the fleet provider first. What are their business needs? And I think that's what's made this synergy really easy, compatible.
Okay. I think the other useful thing about this little diagram too is if you locate yourself on it, you can then start to wrap your head around what you need to do next. And what you need to be looking towards doing, and we've spent a lot of time building this information graph. So we understand you've got to tick the 1D before you can get to the 2D, to your 3D. So sometimes people want to jump all the way down to the 8D and the big operational efficiencies and things like that, but you actually have to get everything else in place and the bedrock, the foundations in place first. So again, something like this will help fleet managers and people involved in fleet understand where they are and where they're trying to get to next.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really good tool just to kind of highlight that maturity curve, And the same principle is all over the place, especially in tech right now with AI implementation and transformation happening across the board. Companies shouldn't be diving into the big, hairiest, most complex workflows to try and save the universe, before they have implemented AI tooling within their existing workflows,
Yeah, absolutely. So just zooming out a little bit, what do we need to prioritize in the next 6 to 12 months in New Zealand? There are 3 lanes of fuel visibility now: eRUC readiness, 3 to 6 months, data integration, 6 to 12. Pete, for a fleet that hasn't started the eRUC conversation, is the 3 to 6 month window realistic? What does that actually involve week to week?
Yeah, I think for fleets who are just starting to dip a toe into the water, the 3 to 6 months should be all about awareness. So, what that means is assess their readiness for the changes. Have a look at their fleet types and compositions. Are we running purely heavy fleets? Are there some EVs, some in this category? There's potential for different workflows and different solutions, different, hardware requirements across the board for those different buckets. So I think the approach I'd recommend here, especially in the early days, is to spend a lot of time assessing readiness, audit vehicle lists, hardware and capabilities, checking the data quality and requirements, and then moving into the quick wins, identifying idle time, speeding, harsh driving, utilization, fuel waste. And I think analyzing your business, to identify what are those key signals, what are our vehicle driver behavior patterns, and what are the signals they're gonna allow us to make the changes that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy, maybe if you can just share for everyone, if someone's watching this and can do just one thing for their fleet this week, what would it be?
I think it's you've got to focus on that risk elimination. And everyone's different, so probably giving a one answer right now is maybe not so useful. But I think you can find, or you probably already know what that area of risk is, and where you can, and then so I guess start to figure out ways to reduce it and eliminate it. Talk to your account manager at Argus, and we can certainly give some insights and give some assistance there. I think we've talked a lot about fuel visibility and driver coaching. So those are, two clear wins where you can put things in place and make sure that your company's sort of tracking in the right direction. So I think it's not about buying more tech. It's about understanding what you've got and actually using it better to then, as Pete just said, to work out what's next and what is 6 months down the line.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great advice. My one takeaway is get closer to your people. Thank you all again for joining us. We've gone a little bit over time, but that's always a good sign in these discussions. I appreciate you joining Teltonika and Argus for this chat, and we look forward to seeing you for the next one.